Welcome to Cars on Call. I am gastroenterologist and automotive journalist Steve Schutz. I'm here with trauma surgeon Stephan Moran, automotive connoisseur, collector, expert historian Adams Hudson. We got a lot to cover, guys. We are going to talk about a lot of action in the lay press about BEVs. BEVs are having a lot of trouble in the marketplace. We'll talk about that. We will talk about car spotting, very interesting. All right, it's not so interesting, but we got a car to talk about.
It's interesting because it's not interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Remarkable for being unremarkable.
Unremarkable, yes.
Although it was a very important car, which is why I want to talk about it. Trauma surgeon safety, which this needs to be highlighted. No other podcast, no other show has a trauma surgeon to talk about car safety. He's a car guy, trauma surgeon Stephan. This makes us unique. And then we're going to talk about look into the future. It's 2030. And because of the struggles of BEVs, automakers need to have internal combustion engine cars. There won't be as many. So we're going to talk about GM, and we're going to talk about which internal combustion engine cars they have left. The spoiler alert: it's not fucking zero. Just not to get pissed off about it, but it's a hell of a lot far away from zero.
Even in California.
Well, California is its own planet. So okay, I don't know. But let's roll, because there's been a lot of action in the lay press about BEVs, a lot. And Adams, you're going to go through a little bit of it, but we have almost uniquely been talking about it since the show started, which this is episode number 90. Since episode number 1, we've been talking about problems with BEVs, about the dogs are not eating the dog food like we thought, and about the hype is overhype. So Adams, bring us up to date with that.
You know, the hype is overhyped, and I plan to sort of catch up with where we are now. But folks, just go slightly back over your shoulder and remember that the whole reason for the BEV world was this word sustainability. That was the thing. Let's get rid of the dyno fuels because they're not sustainable. And so the sustainability part, we were told that dyno fuels were not sustainable. We were told that BEVs would be. We were also told when we got married that our wives said that your college antics were not sustainable. And we were told that dyno fuels were not sustainable. Only both are true, actually, but the remedy for one was the BEV and the remedy for the other was moderation. Only one of those two is true, because you can act.
You lost me. What do you mean? You're talking about marriage, right?
Oh, that's what I was talking about. And, you can act in moderation because it's your choice, but the BEVs are certainly not sustainable, as we're seeing right now. And people will whine and debate and say, oh, no, they totally are, because electricity is renewable, a battery is rechargeable. Well, here are some of the reasons that Steve alluded to that we've spent lots of time on this podcast talking about. There were cries and lies about the greenness of the EVs. That is absolutely false. The toxicity of the batteries, how you make the batteries, the very limited supply of what it is that makes the batteries, the mass that results from putting the batteries in the cars. And it's, then you've got the disposal of the dead batteries. It's just not all that green. Furthermore, you're transporting batteries on cargo ships from the place that they're originally gotten the raw materials to the place that makes them, to the place that puts them in the car, to the place that sells the car. That is a lot of fossil fuels burned just putting them together. Next is the cries and lies about the safety. And as our safety expert, Stephan, has mentioned, the mass of the electric vehicle. There's just a whole lot more stuff in an electric car than in a gas engine vehicle. It makes it heavier, and as Stephan has pointed out many times, when you're talking about trauma and accident physics, the heavier a moving object is, the more likely it is to keep moving as it goes through the concrete barrier, or more likely it goes through the car door of the people it hits. They're heavier by a factor of about 2, and that's a scary proposition. And nearly all of the additional weight, because they're 2 times as heavy as the gas engine counterpart, is due to battery weight. And we won't go all into that. Stephan may want to hit in on that. But as far also, in addition to the weight, think about the times that we've all approached a bridge and it says vehicles over X pounds cannot cross the bridge, or you know that means there's a maximum capacity. Do you really want to be eighth in line behind a bunch of BEVs when the traffic is stalled on both sides? And then you talk about the parking deck, and until battery weight can be halved, this is not sustainable. BEVs catch on fire, as we all know, sometimes spontaneously, sometimes it's the result of spark in an accident. And modern firefighting equipment cannot extinguish these fires. They burn at 4 to 7 times the intensity and temperature of a gas engine vehicle. Oh, the safety involved. But no, it's not any safer to have a BEV. In fact, it's less safe. That also is not sustainable. Next is the charging foolishness. Part of the sustainability thing was, okay, well, we can recharge them and we can drive on free, and the butterflies will live in the wake of the EVs. This is also not true. There's a terrifically scary and alarming Instagram that shows a guy in Southern California at a charging station with about 12 to 16 charging ports out there. All of them are full. Then he drives down the line of the people waiting, and there's not 10 people or 20 people, but 40 to 60 people waiting in line to be charged. Remember, this is a 90-minute to a 4-minute exercise, because charging etiquette, good Lord, have we ever heard the phrase gas station etiquette? I've never heard it, but you got charging etiquette. So you only want to get half full and then you drive on your little whisper quiet way. Well, the catch to this story is the gentleman took this video at 11:15 at night. So how many hours are you going to wait in line at 11:15 to get your BEV charged?
Let me just say this, we have been talking about all of these problems, and we're not the only ones. But here's the difference, and here's why I wanted to talk about this now. And here's the big difference. Everybody knew that these were all kind of problems that were swirling, but everyone just figured, hey, once they start building the cars, these problems will all work themselves out. And that has absolutely not been the case. So GM withdrew all of their guidance about how many BEVs are going to sell this year and next year. And they said, we don't know when we're going to hit our targets. Ford stopped building the Lightning. There's a pause on building the Lightning. And I think also the Mach-E. Mercedes is in conversation now with their dealers. The dealers are saying, stop sending us these cars. Nobody wants them. Not only because they're overpriced, but because of the look. They're not aspirational, is what one dealer said. So now all of a sudden, these problems that seem like, hey, we'll work it out. Now the manufacturers are bumped into a wall, and they're having a lot of come to Jesus moments. Stephan?
Well, let's talk about carbon footprint, okay? We all, okay.
No,
hold on. Here, because
Where did that come from?
Because we're talking about electric vehicles, right? They're the saving grace of the world. They're just the carbon footprint. Well, it takes about 10 years of ownership, actually. But how about listeners look up Luton Carport fire? So this Luton Airport in England caught fire and burned. So a car caught fire. As a result, 150 flights were canceled, 30,000 passengers stranded, over 1,200 vehicles lost. The parking deck is lost. There were like over 100 fire trucks. And what's really interesting about it is they said the fire was started by a diesel Range Rover. And I think, Steve-O, you sent us the video of a guy on YouTube.
Yeah.
Fabulous video. I can't remember his name. But, okay, listeners, this thing started with a fire in the car, and the car basically melted the concrete and dropped through all the floors, setting the whole place on fire. And it was a diesel Range Rover. But the fine detail is a diesel hybrid Range Rover. The lithium batteries caught fire behind the left front tire. Lithium burns over 3,000 degrees, can melt concrete. Diesel burns very low. Gasoline burns very low. A gasoline or diesel vehicle could not have done this. This was the result of a hybrid vehicle catching fire. So you want to talk about carbon footprint? One vehicle, electric vehicle and a car park burned up 1,200 of the vehicles, canceled all those flights. There's a pretty big freaking carbon footprint from one electric vehicle. And I do think there's a role for the hybrid electric vehicles, but all to say, these lithium batteries are a pretty big deal. And, I'd much rather, I've talked about hydrogen vehicles and how they're safe actually compared to battery operated vehicles. But it's this whole, and what was crazy about this Luton fire is the politicians and everybody said it was a diesel vehicle. Nobody will admit or say it was an EV, because electric vehicle. And that's part of where we are, that, come on, people, this whole mantra that we've had, that the saving grace of the world is the EV and they're wonderful. No, they're not. It's like owning a Rolex. It's a luxury item to have an EV that you can have a home charger. Other than that, you're screwed with one.
Well, and that's so true, and the politics that play into this, Stephan, because it's sort of building up to the whole point that Steve ended up making, which is, if you can't sell them, nobody wants to produce them. I mean, that's kind of like the ending result of a capitalistic society, which thankfully we live in. But the truth of the matter is they keep whitewashing. Oh, no, wait, let's change the news. Let's make it good news. Let's sort of like polish up the bad news. And I don't really understand the big, the capital letters, who is in charge of all this. And I did not mean to imply the World Health Organization.
Isn't it Greta?
Yeah. It's almost got to be.
Yeah.
But to continue trying to mask what is the truth, which is, and Stephan mentioned, the forensics of the fire showed that it was created and sparked and started behind the left front tire. That's where it began. That's where the lithium battery is. Why would that not be the truth? Why would that not be told to the public? Because that was a huge risk. And when you say 100 fire trucks trying to put it out, what of course they're trying to do is to keep 150 jets from exploding.
Yeah.
That was a threat.
I think, we have to, first of all, it's worth saying, I think all of us, certainly Stephan and I, have driven BEVs. I love the Porsche Taycan, and I would happily own one. I think it's a great car, but we're just not there yet. And where we are? We're at a point where we can do a lot with emissions and fuel economy using hybrids. JD Powers, Gino Effler was on our show and talked about it. That to me makes a lot of sense. That's where we should go. I think this is right now, it's just not where we should be going. And it's a shame that it takes, I don't know, like, what's the right word? It takes like someone, people to kind of tolerate being called Luddites or people who want to ruin the planet to kind of get to the truth. We don't want to ruin the planet.
I mean, once again, like I said, these are luxury items. If you can afford to charger in your home, that's fine. But look at now that Tesla's opened up their chargers to other companies, the lines across the country for, at the Tesla charging stations are out of control. And I'd be pissed off if I was a Tesla owner, because you kind of buy it because you've got your own charging system, your own network set up, so you can make do and make it work. But for everybody else, I mean, this is a luxury item. This is what they are.
Well, and as far as the sustainability versus unsustainability, like Steve mentioned, Ford is halted, GM is halted. I personally think Lucid's going under. I mean, I know that's maybe a
what about Fisker? Oh my God, how many times is that? How when will people quit loaning him money? I mean,
Fisker,
I mean, an amazing car designer. I saw the original Fisker at the New York Auto Show that Gino Effler took me to years ago, when for the 50-year anniversary of the seatbelt, and gorgeous cars. I think it was called the Fisker Karma.
Yeah.
He does, his designs they're fantastic designs, but he keeps trying to start a car company, and people give him money, and he's got the new one coming out, which George Cocker wasn't real happy with, didn't like it a whole lot, so it really wasn't ready for prime time. But I don't know, it's because it's a BEV company. People, venture capitalists want to throw their money at it, and I bet now people are just venture capital is just going to run away.
Well, we gotta move on, but Henrik Fisker, I know Adams agrees with me totally. He peaked with the design of the BMW Z8, and since then
Yes.
he's supposed to be
Yep.
nothing but annoying. So,
Yep.
and a word about Lucid. Lucid has a lot of Saudi money behind it, so they have a lot of runway because they have Saudi money, but no money is unlimited. So we'll see. Hey, car spotting. This is something I saw.
Was it a BEV, Steve?
Well, it's similar.
Okay.
Where where BEV is really high tech. This is not high tech. 1978 Dodge Aspen wagon, and you can show the picture, Stephan.
Yeah,
what a look
here.
This was when we were in the middle of the gas crises of the 70s, and what the Chrysler Corporation decided to do was take their small cars, which was the Plymouth Valiant, the Dodge Duster, and they said, let's make this into a new line of cars. It's going to be now full-size family vehicles. And they did. And they didn't have the money that GM went to front-wheel drive. They downsized. GM poured money into it. Chrysler didn't have money. So they just did the best they could. And this is the result. By the way, they made this from 1976 to 1980. They were replaced by the famous K cars. So they finally got money and they came out with the K cars. But this is a little bit of here's a fact before you guys jump in. By the way, I'll say two things. This is also, I've said this before about the 78 Corvette. I'll say it about the 78 Dodge Aspen. This is the epicenter of the Malaise era. This is when all the malaise happened right here, right here with this car. And this was the 1976 Motor Trend Car of the Year.
Oh my.
Oh, that's painful to hear. That is a car, you look at it and it could actually, if you stared at it for long, it could cause clinical depression. It just really it doesn't have an inspiring line on it up to and including the Ford Pinto-esque taillights. Look at those units. And they're just hanging on to something that wasn't worth sort of hanging on to. But I'm sort of shocked that you saw one out in the wild.
Look at the condition. This is like a concourse edition. I would like to meet the owner of this thing to say, just tell me why, explain to me your passion at having a absolutely perfect, like you said, Malaise car of zero value, but clearly some emotional attachment.
Stephan, something tells me you would still be talking to him.
Yeah. Help me understand.
Right. Say, dude, you could have saved any car, but you didn't. You saved this one. WTF?
Everybody's got a story. Yeah, but oh my gosh.
Anyway, it does remind me of the line from Animal House: "Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life." And that kind of is what that car is. It's fat and ugly and stupid, and yet it's alive.
Somebody kept it alive.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
Drama.
Okay, all right. We got to change gears.
I thought that was the trauma section.
Yeah, I am traumatized by that. All right, let me get this teed up here. Here we go. So Jeff Bank, former host on this show, always sends me things he picks up. And he sent me a great article that new vehicles to be rated on how they make drivers stay alert. And this came out about a year ago, but then I started thinking about this more, and because we had the discussions about autopilot versus drivers, which one is safer. And I started doing kind of a deep dive. I found a very interesting study that came out of the University of Central Florida by Mohammed Abdel Ati. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Shangguang Ding. They're obviously graduate students, but they did a matched case control analysis of autonomous versus human driving vehicle accidents. So that's a lot of words, but basically what they did was they did what you do in this kind of case study is you match crash per crash. So you find a crash at 6 a.m. on a 2-lane road, the car goes off the road, and it's a regular driver, and then you find one that's the same, that's an autonomous vehicle. So then you compare the two. So this is a case control analysis, and I don't want to get into a lot of details because there's a whole lot of numbers, but they actually looked at about 2,000. Most of this came from California, of course, and they did a match control study, but they had 2,100 what they call AVs, autonomous vehicles, and about 35,000 human driving vehicles, and they compared the data. So when you think about it, if you're matching it, if you're going to be matching car crashes, so these are vehicles that crashed. So if you're going to be matching them, where do you think that a autonomous vehicle would do better than a car driven by a person? And where do you think the person would do better than an autonomous vehicle? So
is that a question for us to throw an answer?
You can kind of ponder and fill it in, or I can just jump straight to the data. But I want you to here's what I want you to think about is, how does an autonomous vehicle work? It analyzes its environment through camera and LiDAR. So we know that in the ideal situation, an autonomous vehicle actually is going to be way better than a human driver. It can process the information far quicker. We talked about you got 1 second and you got one move typically driving, but an autonomous vehicle is already going to know how fast you're going, how much brakes it can apply, how much turn it can input. It knows the road, sees the road, it can go where it needs to go. So we know that overall, in the right situations, an autonomous vehicle is going to do better. And that was a hypothesis, but they found
before you jump out there, having been on the road, I was on the road 5 hours yesterday in the broad daylight, coming home from a road trip. And I saw so many people veering. This is broad daylight, middle of the day, on a Sunday, just veering, just obviously distracted.
Drive. They're on their damn phones.
They're on their damn phone. And
they're touching that 18-inch, 20-inch center console TV screen you have now in your car.
Yeah, I would, to your point, Adams, I would think that autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, they're going to do better in the open road because they're not on their phones. They're not going to fall asleep. People will fall asleep. So but I think in a city, they're not going to be able to, they can't know everything, and the campers can't know anything. And the reason I mention this is I read something I thought was really interesting. A researcher was talking about AI, but they said, this applies to autonomous vehicles too. A person puts their hand on the stove once, and they know never put their hand on a stove again. The autonomous vehicle, the computer has to see every single stove before they learn not to put their hand on the stove. That's a key way to describe the difference. Wow. And when you're going through a city, even though you're not paying attention, you can anticipate something that a computer wouldn't be able to.
Wow, that's a great way to look at that.
So what's interesting was one was the run off the road condition, and the autonomous vehicle accident risk is 0.3 times as high as that of the human driver. Or you can say, it's just way far likely. But the 2 times a day where the probability of an autonomous vehicle having an accident were dawn and dusk, or turning conditions, and it was 5 times higher for dawn or dusk, and 1.37 times higher than a turning condition, respectively. So what that means, listeners, is that if you're relying on your autonomous vehicle to drive you at dawn or dusk, it's got about 5 times higher risk of not properly analyzing the conditions and making a mistake than you do. And if the vehicle is turning at an intersection, it's about 1.3 times higher than a human, for an accident to occur. So, what this data is telling me is that, in America, the land of the free, we're just allowing this beta software on our roads, whereas the Europeans, and particularly the Germans, are only allowing this on autonomous driving on designated stretches of the road, where we know the vehicle is going to do better. So going down the interstate, a well-marked interstate with traffic, autonomous vehicle is going to do way better than any human in managing lane distance, the distance between you and the car in front of you, It's going to avoid braking. Imagine if all the autonomous vehicles were communicating and somebody slams on their brake, 10 cars back, the autonomous vehicle already knows that that car is braking. You're not going to have the human pause where they're looking at their phone, like look up, oh shit, and go to slam on the brakes. So this is one of the first studies I could find that is actually doing case control, looking at them. And we do know that autonomous vehicles are safer than humans, but not at dawn and dusk. And what this brings me to is back to Jeff Banks' article that it sent me, is that the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety and Consumer Reports, they're really kind of pushing the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that autonomous vehicles need to have a system in there that is monitoring the driver to make sure that the driver is doing their job. Because there are situations like this article showed where the system doesn't do well. Dawn and dusk, that's typically when the driver's going to be tired. They're going to be paying the least attention. So they really want to have systems installed in vehicles that do more than just, are your hands on the steering wheel? No, are your eyes engaged with the road? And they can look at your eyes. You know, there's plenty of systems out there that can look at your eyes and say, no, he's not looking at the road. He's looking at his damn phone. So, but we all know that there's studies that have gone back for a long time. And if you put a human in front of an automated device, something that's sorting widgets, A versus B, and the human's supposed to monitor the system, we know that we just get way too bored and our attention wanders. And we know this happens in our vehicles as well. So we've got the data that, yes, autonomous driving in certain situations is safer than humans, but we need to have the human backup. And how do we have a human backup in an automated system where the human becomes rapidly bored and just doesn't pay attention anymore? Well, you got to have monitoring devices in the vehicle that will then monitor the human, that they will then take over in the appropriate situations. So you don't slam into an emergency vehicle, so you don't hit a pedestrian. But once again, it's fascinating to see this evolve, and we're finally starting to get some data. And hats off to University of Central Florida for doing this great case match controlled study. A lot of great detail and data and statistics, but I don't want to bore you guys with that. Just
not at all.
Adams, last week you said, are you the driver or the passenger? And unfortunately, with these autonomous vehicles, you become the passenger. That's what you're talking about, Stephan. And to that point, and then I want to hear what you have to say, Adams. To that point, speaking of your mind wandering, there was a video. It's not a video that I saw, but the video was described where a young couple was distracted when they were in their autopilot. They were doing, you know what, in the front seat, and they were distracted. They were not. Their minds were obviously not on the road. And young couples. I can imagine it. How about that?
Is that the 60 mile per hour club instead of the mile high club?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, you actually can imagine it if you feel like you have given the reins of your vehicle to someone else. And I wonder if autonomous driving is now going to be, because this is a pet peeve of mine, if it's just going to be co-driving. Is it just going to be, okay, you're there and the autonomy of certain things is there, like the lane wandering, the passing avoidance, the backup camera. Those are incredibly useful items, no question about it. But for somebody just to do that in the front seat and expect for the vehicle to drive them there, that's not paying attention. So I don't know. One thing I also want to say is thank you to Jeff Banks for paying attention to the show enough to send these incredible articles and videos and links to stuff, because it's just, I don't know, it's thought provoking.
Yeah, another person that sends ideas is his father, Jerry. So the two of them, they're really great. So moving on, thanks, Stephan. Since BEVs are struggling, and we know that they are the future, we get it, but since they're struggling now, we thought, all right, OEMs, manufacturers are going to need to continue to manufacture and sell internal combustion engines. They are not going away. And we thought, okay, if they're not going to be gone by the year 2030 or 2035, I think they're going to be here a lot longer than that. Wouldn't it be interesting to say, all right, a thought experiment. It's 2030. BEVs, hydrogen cars, and plug-in hybrids are 30% of the market. I think that's a reasonable estimate for 7 years from now. Mary Barra, who is the CEO of GM, she is gone, and you're the GM CEO.
Wait a minute. You're predicting Mary Barrow gone in 7 years.
I
Maybe
think she'll be
fewer.
gone sooner than that. She's been there more than 10 years. 10 years is a pretty long tenure for a CEO. I think she'll be gone.
She didn't handle the union very well either. She really put her foot in her mouth on CNBC interview over it.
I didn't see that.
Right. Oh yeah.
Okay. So my feeling is, all right, what kind of lineup does GM have in 2030? And I'm talking internal combustion engine. So Adams, I was really curious to have you kind of start this conversation and say, here's what I think. And I got a lineup myself. Let's just talk about the lineups. I think there's going to be a lot of cool cars in 2030. This is to give everybody hope.
Well, and I mean, you put out very, very interesting topics to give people sort of like their own thought university time to sort of cogitate and develop. If I were doing GM at the time, in 7 years, 6 or 7 years, probably the first thing I would do, and this is not the most important thing I would do, but the first thing I would do is I would kill the Hummer division. Hummer has,
yes.
it basically has an SUV and a truck, which I will call from this moment forward, Hum and Hummer, for the obvious reasons. But I would keep the licenses to some of the technology that they have developed in that vehicle, which is incredible. How much money was spent on it, but maybe the crab walk tech you license off to the military. There you go. You license that off to the military, and any of the other tech about how it was built, license it to maybe Jeep or to other people, but to keep some funding alive, but just get rid of the stupid vehicle.
They're being sold through GMC dealers, so they don't have dealerships anymore. But Stephan, what was your description of this car?
The Antichrist on wheels, man. It's 10,000 pounds of lithium battery just waiting to burn through to the mantle of the earth and release the Antichrist.
Oh, wow.
I mean, this thing is, it's just awful. It is absolutely, it's going to kill people. It's going to, I don't know. It's the Antichrist on 4 wheels, man.
It totally. And so you scrap that and you take the money that you've saved and you invest 10 to 20%. You buy 10 to 20% of Porsche's water fuel enterprise that they're working on now, which actually could be sustainable. So I think if I were GM, I would sort of shift to that, because as we covered in the first part of this, the whole BEV thing looks like a failed experiment.
Just a moment. They went to Chile, and there's an area of Chile where the wind blows 24/7, and they set up a wind-powered lab essentially that creates out of elements that they don't do any digging. They create gasoline. It's lab produced gasoline, and they're getting it as they make more and more. It's getting cheaper and cheaper. Lab produced gasoline you don't have to dig for.
It's just unbelievable that they can take water and through a very, very, very complicated chemical composition and recomposition, make it combustible. But they are doing it, and slowly but surely, and it's super expensive per gallon now. But of course it is. I think we all are old enough to remember the $4,000 TV that is now about $299 at Best Buy.
So you're saying, GM should invest in that and be a part owner. Yeah, I like that.
Be on it, because there's plenty of water to go around. Last time I checked, it still rains.
Well, think about it. Here, they had here's the Antichrist once. But think about it. I should have a picture of the Antichrist here. But think about it. The Hummer didn't work the first time around. The H2 and the H3. Okay. But now they're reinventing it again, thinking it's going to work just because it's an EV. And by the way, it's $100,000 vehicle. I don't know. It's once again, this is a luxury boutique item that is not going to save the company.
We talked about this Q3 sales during that show. We talked about it. They sell in the hundreds. They're not selling many.
The next thing I would do is I would kill all model line redundancies. Now, when Alfred Sloan came up with his business model that said you gravitate from a Chevrolet to an Oldsmobile to a Pontiac to a Buick, and a Buick to a Cadillac, and that was a great lineup when, and only when, we were selling 80% of the vehicles that we produced domestically within the United States. That was a pretty dang good model. But right now, this whole...
that was GM's market share.
That was, they were killing it. They were moving people up with this ascension model, and that whole aspirational ascension model worked then. It does not work now. So right now, you look at the marketing redundancies between the model lineups of Buick and Cadillac and Chevrolet, and so you're cross shopping within those lineups, and there's just duplicative models. And of course, platform sharing is an okay thing, as Lexus and Toyota and Acura Honda showed us, and Infiniti Nissan have showed us to a lesser degree. But right now, we're cannibalizing sales between Buick. Go ahead.
Or a GMC or a Chevy, a Suburban or a Yukon or whatever, or a GMC versus a Silverado. It's just a different badge.
Exactly. And people are confused. There's not enough discernible differences between any of the ones that you just named. And there are so many more. When I went on the website, I started seeing all these different models that I don't keep up with. And I don't know. I mean, do you know the difference between a Chevy Bolt, Trax, Trailblazer, Blazer, Equinox, Traverse, Tahoe, and Suburban? I don't. And yet there is a Buick sort of version of that with the Encore, Envision, and Enclave. Nonetheless, the repetitive and overlapping crud that goes on in these model lineups mean that you might generate one lead with one dude. He goes to the Buick place. He looks at the Chevy. He looks at the GMC. He looks at the Cadillac. He's hopelessly confused. He decides to go on payments to the one that he chooses. And so you've spent 3 times engineering, the platform development, and the marketing to get one lead, one sale, because he ain't buying 2 of them. I would kill all the redundancies.
Yeah, I'll just jump in quick before I give you my list. I just killed Buick. What do you need Buick for?
I'm not sure, but it just
something that septuagenarians have to look forward to buy.
Septuagenarians.
I'm only 8 years away.
Yeah. No, I killed off Buick.
Okay, well, and that may be what needs to be done, because it's not performing. I mean, one of the slowest selling vehicles of the current time is the I think it's called the Envision, spelled with an E. They're running out of E words when you spell that like that. Let's see. I would blow up the Colorado and Canyon mid-size trucks, which is a very lucrative segment, but they stink at it. They're doing a terrible job with these vehicles, and they should be killing it. I mean, they're just letting Toyota have it to themselves. Jeep is a little bit of a write-off. The Maverick is doing pretty well.
The Ford Ranger is doing well.
Yeah.
The Maverick, forget about it. Maverick's not doing pretty well. Maverick's incredible. You can't find one on the lots, and it's been like that for 2 years.
So those are some things I would do, and this is why I'm not CEO of a company. But that's what I would try to save a little money, make some investments, and simplify the model line. It's too confusing. Right now, it's like being in a Mexican restaurant, and there's 7 pages of different options, which all include beans, rice, cheese, and meat, and some version of the wrapping, and they're all basically the same.
Yeah. I really took a hatchet. Stephan, you can put up the pictures, but Cadillac, I said Cadillac really should barely exist. It should have an Escalade, and it should have a CT 5V black wing, and that's it. That's all Cadillac has. And then there's now a Corvette. There's a Corvette sports car. There is a Corvette. Yeah, keep scrolling. There's the CT. Jeff Bank convinced me to put this in, and he's right. There should be a performance car.
That's a great looking car.
Yeah. So, and then there's a Corvette brand, and I put the Macan up there. There should be a Corvette Macan, Corvette version of this size, a Q5 size thing. And keep scrolling. There should be a Corvette Cayenne. There's the Cayenne. These are Corvette branded cars. There should be a luxury. I thought a luxury city car that's it's the internal combustion, but that's probably a mistake. They don't need that. But GMC, there should be a Yukon Denali, and they should have their pickup truck, and they should be gas powered. People want these. Families buy these all the time. Chevy, there should be a Silverado. There's a Silverado pickup truck, and there should be the Suburban and the Tahoe. I don't think there should be a big GMC SUV. But again, all the other stuff is gone. All the Terrain, all that stuff is gone. Buick is gone. And then keep scrolling. There should be a Blazer that looks like the fucking Bronco. I've been saying this forever. You should take this C10 Chevy Blazer. This is a resto mod, but it looks kind of futuristic, and it should be the same size as the Ford Bronco. And there should be a Chevy Bronco Sport, and there should be a Chevy Maverick. That's it. Everything else is dead.
Yeah. I love everything you're saying. Go back to that Blazer, the C10s. God, that thing is good looking.
Something like that, just because they did with the Bronco, Stephan. They could do that with the Blazer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I've always been terribly confused with the GM Chevy lineups. Why would you which one? Well, the GM's actually better than the Chevy and it's higher end. But it's just terrible confusion. You do go to the GM dealer, do you go to the Chevy dealer, do you go to the Buick dealer, and it's just they started sharing badges way too much, and I agree. They need to just simplify the lineup, make it very easy. But I do think that breaking Corvette out as a brand, like the Porsche brand, I think would be very clever idea. I don't think it'd work for Ford and the Mustang brand, though they tried the Mach-E, but definitely people want performance SUVs, small, medium, and large. They want a performance vehicle. And I think that could be the saving grace for General Motors. Get rid of everything else. You got a GM or you got a Corvette, and that's it. And you're going to get a pickup truck, a full-size pickup truck. It's a GM. A full-size SUV, it's a GM. It's not a Chevy or a GM or a Cadillac. I think Cadillac should just stick with the big Escalade, and that would be really it. And then perhaps a four-door sedan. But you're right. Now there's just so much different stuff that all looks the same. That's got different badges on it, and they need to streamline it.
So, Steph, to clarify, are you condoning that there's a GM but not a GMC? So there's a GM. Oh,
yeah, you're right. GMC.
Okay, no.
But I think you're right.
So it's GMC and a Chevrolet and a Cadillac, but a Corvette line.
A Corvette line, yes.
I got you. Okay.
Yep.
We're all saying the same thing. Get rid of a whole bunch of crap you don't need.
Yeah.
But you could have a pretty darn good internal combustion engine lineup just by getting rid of all the trash. And listen, if you want a family vehicle that's boring, get a BEV. But the internal combustion engine, I think, would become kind of the sporty enthusiast area of the market.
Yeah, no kidding. I will go a little afield here, and you guys can rail on this, as I imagine you might. I would consider, and I know it's been tried before and it's not been very successful, to have a city commuter like the original Mini, the Fiat 500, not the current one, but the original Fiat 500, and maybe a 3-cylinder hybrid. It gets 70 to 80 miles a gallon. You are not allowed to take it on any roads with a speed limit above 50. It would help with parking. It would help with the commuter congestion. You could still get 4 people in it. You don't have to worry that much about luggage because you're just within the city. I would consider that. I would also consider reducing all offerings to a good, better, best. Go ahead.
You're condoning an American Kai car. Japanese K car.
Condoning basically that,
yes.
Maybe a little bit bigger because we're a whole lot fatter than they are.
Yeah.
But, unless you want to use the jaws of life to get out of one every time. But I just feel like a little commuter car would probably work. And again, in the hybrid world, a 3-cylinder hybrid vehicle, let the battery live its life, but let's not have designated charging stations where people are up at midnight to 3 a.m. trying to get the stupid thing charged. Drive the charging station, as we have said so many times on here before. And I think reducing the the lineup complexity to a good, better, best is the right way to go. Because Steph, I'm like you, I get so confused with which is the which. There's too many gray non-distinctions out there for any normal person to keep up with.
Yeah. All right. So we solved that problem. I just wanted to say one thing in summary about the whole BEV internal combustion engine thing. And I think this kind of captures where we are in 2023. The BEV, you got a family, and the family has 2 sons. And the BEV is the Ivy League educated Rhodes Scholar who whoever knew him said, this guy is going to be a Fortune 500 CEO. However, he's currently working at Starbucks. And despite that, everyone's saying that's okay. He's going to be running the world soon. His parents are so proud. The internal combustion engine is his older brother. He actually never went to college. He is a high school grad, but he owns a very successful HVAC company.
They started a Bitcoin company, didn't he?
No, he's not smart enough for that. It's an HVAC company, and he has 5 trucks and 50 employees. He makes $750,000 a year. His friends and his wife and kids think he's awesome, but his parents are vaguely embarrassed by him. That's where we are, I think.
That is just beautiful. It's the prodigal son where the firstborn has done pretty well.
But he didn't get a Rhodes Scholar, and he didn't go to Harvard. But then again, he's not working at Starbucks either.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. Unless anyone has anything else to say, but we'll see what happens. I'm not sure Mary Barra is going to last much longer, but I think this kind of consolidation and hacking away is going to save money, and it'll keep GM going. Ford and Stellantis have to make the same kind of decisions.
Well, I think it brings home to the point that today's consumer is, we've learned to shop on Amazon. You just point and click, you read the reviews. Tesla brought this by bypassing the dealer. You got a choice of, sexy vehicles, the S, the X, the Y, that's the 3, the X and the Y. And you can pick different trims, but it's a very simplified lineup that you can just buy on your phone. I don't want to have to pick if I've got 2 trucks that look exactly the same. One's got a GMC badge, one's got a Chevy badge, one's called a Silverado, the other's, I don't know what is a GMC. Why am I paying more for one than the other? What's the point? Simplify it and bring it all under one umbrella. And I think that's where we are in today's current marketplace. And the shopper wants simplification. Yeah, there's brand identification, but you can't dilute the brand,
So Stephan, you call this Teslaification famously, probably 6 months or 9 months ago. And I thought that term was fantastic. Here's a question for you. Should Tesla introduce an internal combustion engine and a hybrid vehicle?
I think Tesla needs to introduce a hybrid vehicle. I think going all the way to internal combustion, people would just lose their mind. But I think it would need to be one where the engine's the generator, not, and Honda's got this new kind of complicated CR-V coming out that's got this pretty cool drivetrain where the engine's a generator at low speeds. But once you get up to highway speed, now the engine is actually is doing the drivetrain. And they found that's the most efficient way to have it. Pretty amazing setup, complicated. But I think clearly that people are going to get pissed at Tesla because they can't charge anymore. Now they've got Fords, they got GMs, all these people lined up at their Tesla charging station. It's going to piss off Tesla customers.
Yeah, I got a quick story. We have to close out, but Brett Williams, who, as you know, is the F-15 pilot, retired, who has been a guest on this show.
And I'll see him this Thursday. We're meeting at Porsche Driving Experience at Barber in Birmingham for the Masters course.
You got to talk about that. You got to talk about it. So he has a neighbor who has a early Tesla Model S, and he got into an accident with it, and he fought with the insurance company, do not total this car. And he finally won the battle, and they fixed it for him. The reason he fought so hard is early Tesla Model S's, you get free supercharging for life. And if he had to get another one, he would have lost that. Isn't that interesting?
That really is, because it sets a different intrinsic value to the vehicle when it comes with that for life. It's nothing about what the book says. It's nothing about what the online value says. It's what it says in the cost of ownership over time.
When he's number 20 in line behind Polestars and Mustang Mach-E's and Lucids, he may change his mind.
Yeah.
He'll trade it in for a Hellcat.
Okay,
Right.
we are maybe 1 minute, and I've got a question to ask you guys. If we're talking about with the GM, we're talking about trimming out, killing Buick. We're talking about simplifying the model line. We don't have Hummer anymore. You guys say, does Cadillac go to the head of the class, top of the class in luxury and price and exclusivity, or just blend in?
I say Corvette. If they were to spin out the Corvette brand, do the internal combustion Corvette, the electric Corvette, and then like Steve-O had a Cayenne size, a Taycan size, and a Macan size, they would lead the pack at General Motors without a doubt, and they would overcome. I think Cadillac would become probably the Escalade, and then maybe a four-door sedan. That'd be about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree with Stephan. And I thought about this, and here's what I thought. I thought you would end up having co-branded dealerships. So they would be at the top. So it would be Cadillac / Corvette. And that dealership would be the top. They would be,
Yes.
Like it's what we had in the 70s and 80s, Porsche, Audi.
Lincoln Mercury.
Yep.
Yeah. And Lincoln Mercury is not a good analogy. Corvette and Cadillac would be at the top. And I think they'd end up just really having, because you could say, why not make the Cadillac CT5V? Why not make that a Corvette, right? I mean, why not? And in fact, you could actually argue that make it all Corvette, including the Escalade. I just said the Escalade is so entrenched, it's so successful.
It is.
Yeah, so successful.
Right.
And the thing I like about both your guys' answer is actually now it gives validity and justification to the fact that Cadillac is heavily in racing. And they're into a level of racing that gives justification to, like, oh, wow, I saw Cadillac on the track this weekend. I guess I'll go into the showroom and buy an SUV. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
But if you paired it up and married it with and sort of like halfway Siamesed it within the Corvette brand, I think you would have something. Steph, are you able to pick up the photo of the CN?
Yes.
Right as we sign off.
Here we go.
Take a look at a better looking Corvette right there. So there you go.
Now the CN, that could be a Corvette, sure.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think that could sell.
I think so too. I'd buy it over the Corvette right there.
I completely agree. All righty. So Stephan, sign us out.
All right, listeners, thanks for tuning in once again. Like, listen, subscribe. Steve is now putting us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. He's become the social media king. Follow us wherever you like. And remember to like, listen, subscribe, and hit that bell button if there is one. And we'll catch you next week.